Okay, I guess more people will join in the upcoming minutes, but in order not to be late with the agenda, I will start. So in the first place, thank you all for attending one of the latest webinars of the ALFA project. Today we will talk about the biogas framework conditions, specifically about the market challenges, policy trends, and future opportunities. With me, we have representatives from Sustainable Innovations, specifically myself and my colleague Carla Sebastiani, but also we have representatives from White Research and the European Biogas Association. Just to explain briefly about who are we. So my name is Pablo Morales from Sustainable Innovations. I will be moderating the webinar and also trying to address all the different questions that you may have during this session. With me, Carla Sebastiani will also explain a little bit more about the project. So I will like to give the floor to all our speakers to give a short introduction of yourself. So Carla.
Thank you, Pablo. I'm Carla Sebastiani. I'm a business development manager at Sustainable Innovations with Pablo as well. We are colleagues. And our role in this project is as representatives of the Spanish hub. I will be explaining a little bit in the introduction what is a hub so that you can have that context. But we are basically leading all the activities in Spain, and also the market uptake measures to boost the adoption of biogas in Europe.
Thank you. So we can jump to Sofia, who is Bioeconomy Project Consultant at White Research.
Hello, thank you, Pablo. Hello, everyone. So I am Sofia Mikopoulou, and I'm here today representing White Research, where I work as a project consultant for the Bioeconomy and Agri-Food Unit. And we are part of ALFA's consortium. We lead the Belgium hub, and among other activities, we are also responsible for developing a set of policy recommendations. So that's what I'm here for today, and I will later on provide you a short overview of our findings and policy recommendations so far, and on the next step. So thank you.
Thank you, Sofia. And last but not least, we have Lucille Sever, Policy Officer at the European Biogas Association. Go ahead, Lucille.
Hi, everybody. So yes, Lucille Sever. I'm a senior policy advisor for circular economy at EBA. I work both on agricultural and environmental topics, policy files, yeah, I'm more a specialist on the regulatory part. And EBA is also involved in ALFA Project, mostly through our colleague Georges, that you might know.
Great, thank you so much. So briefly, I will introduce the agenda. Well, somehow the speakers of today has more or less talk about their contributions today, but just to have a clear view of the overall agenda today. In the first place, I will give some webinar notices. Then I will give the floor to Carla to introduce in the first place the ALFA project. Then she will also explain the market condition of the ALFA hubs and the common challenges. Then we will jump to Lucille to talk about the policy context in Europe. And we will finish with Sofia talking about the next steps on policy recommendation. And at the end of the webinar, you will have the opportunity to enter all your questions. And you can enter your question during the presentations, and I will be in charge of compiling everything so we can read it at the end of the webinar. And then I would like to invite you to fill a satisfaction survey that I will share with you, a QR code. So make sure that you have your phone next to you so you can scan the QR code. Some webinar notices. So the webinar is being recorded. So in case you want to watch it again in the future, it will be probably uploaded in this week or probably next week in the ALFA YouTube channels and also in the ALFA website. For the speakers, please make sure that your microphone is muted so we don't have any interruption during your presentations. And this is for all the audience. Please we don't want to make this webinar only very static, so we want it as much as dynamic possible. So enter any kind of curiosity or question that you may have in the chat box in the Zoom application, so I can compile in, and as I said, we will read it at the end of all the presentations. So I don't want to steal more time to Carla. So Carla, I will stop sharing so you can share your own screen.
Yes.
Perfect.
Okay. I think you can see it now in full screen.
Yes, we can. So go ahead.
Okay, amazing. So welcome everyone. Thank you for being here. I will start with talking a little bit about the project in case that some of you are not familiar with the work that we are doing, just for you to have a little bit more context. And then I will be going through the framework conditions, which is basically the context for the countries that are part of ALFA and what we have identified mainly as challenges and spaces for improvement in terms of adoption of biogas and biomethane technologies. So talking a little bit about the project, of course, if you have any questions or something that maybe I will not address due to time constraints, please write in the chat and we can answer by the end of the session. The project, let's say, has the final goal of supporting the market uptake of these technologies for biogas and biomethane, specifically produced from animal manure. Obviously, these will also help to increase the share of renewable energy in Europe to reduce emissions, especially from this untreated manure. The key features, which in the following slides I will be going a little bit more into detail, are the establishment of the regional hubs, the business and technical support services that we have provided for biogas stakeholders, the development of a set of digital tools, and then the development of a replication guide. Basically, the problem in a nutshell is that even though there are many relevant and mature technologies for biogas production, there are many countries in Europe who have a huge potential to produce biogas and biomethane, but there are some bottlenecks that are hindering them from doing so. Why is this happening? Well, low social acceptance and awareness, both from the stakeholders in the value chain and also from citizens, insufficient technical knowledge and skills, both for dedicated sectors and also in the farming sector in general. And then last but not least, of course, financial and regulatory barriers, which are, as you know, very complicated because each country has its own framework. And in many cases, even within countries, there are several types of frameworks. So it's not exactly easy to understand and to access this information. So from ALFA, how can we support the uptake of these technologies? What we aim to do is to support at least 50 livestock farmers or stakeholders in adopting these technologies. The main countries where we are focused on are Belgium, Denmark, Spain, Greece, Italy, and Slovakia. Obviously, the impact of the project goes beyond these countries, but these are the ones that, let's say, the project is focused on. So how have we been doing this? We established what we call regional hubs for these countries that I just mentioned. Basically, the hub is an online presence for each specific country, for stakeholders and value chain actors to have someone they can contact in order to get more information or to participate in the project or to obtain the benefits from the project. Then the development of the support tools, I will explain a little bit more in the next slides. And then the delivery of business and technical support services. We are now finishing our second and last provision of services. So we are now approaching, let's say, the final stage of the project. So regarding the tools that I was just mentioning, we have a knowledge center, which is a repository of material, reports, and data. You can find information that is country-specific, also for Europe in general, and it's also in the regional languages. and in English. So there's a big variety of content. Then we have the Biogas Forum. As its name indicates, is that a forum where you can go in and have discussions with stakeholders of interesting topics. Then we have the decision support tool, which is a tool that provides an estimate on the profitability and benefits of the biogas solutions with a few data that you put in. And then we have the Atlas map, which is a repository of success cases that you can find in the countries that I just mentioned. And also we have some success cases from other countries. Obviously, not all cases in the countries are included here, but these are some of the most interesting ones that we have found. Then regarding the provision of the services, as I was mentioning, we had 2 open calls throughout the project. We are now closing the last one. So we have provided business and technical consultancy services for many stakeholders who were interested mainly in the objective countries, but also outside of these countries. And then finally, and where the work is focused on for the next months, is on the policy recommendations. Now we have to take all the information that we have gathered from workshops, webinars, seminars, mutual learning workshops, and turn that into the policy recommendations. These are the ALFA Hub representatives. For Belgium, we have Wet Research. For Denmark, Food and Biocluster Denmark. For Greece, Q-Plan International. For Italy, APRE. For Slovakia, Pedal Consulting. And for Spain, Sustainable Innovations. All the hub managers are here in this webinar. So if you have any specific country-specific questions, they may be able to help us. Okay, so that's it for the project introduction. Again, if you have any questions, be sure to leave them in the chat. We will now start a brief overview on the, let's say, context of each of these countries. This is basically to set the stage a little bit for the following presentations. So we'll go in alphabetical order. So starting with Belgium, looking at the energy mix, we can see a lot of contribution from oil, natural gas, of course, and then the percentage, for example, for the use of biofuels and waste, it's around 7%. They have managed to decrease their CO2 emissions in 28% from 2000 to 2023, is more or less this data. Then the share of renewable sources in the electricity generation is around 26%. And this may seem maybe low, depending on what you compare it to. But when we see the percentage of increase that represents, is almost 2,000%. So it's a huge increase. This is between 2000 and 2022. And then in terms of modern renewables, which are basically renewable energy sources using biomass as feedstock, we have an important increase of 700%. So going a little bit more into detail on biogas production and potential, we will be seeing more or less the same graphs for all countries. So I will explain a little bit here, and then it will be easier to go forward. This pie, basically the inner part, represents biogas feedstock via gasification, and then the outer pie represents via anaerobic digestion. So in Belgium, most of the biogas potential is related to anaerobic digestion. It's a similar case to all the other countries, and you can see that the feedstock that has the most potential is animal manure, followed maybe by agricultural residues and biowaste. In general, we can say these are estimates provided by the International Energy Agency that the potential for biogas production in Belgium is 0.6 billion cubic meters of biogas by 2030. Obviously, this figure, if you're not familiar, maybe won't make much sense, but we will go comparing each of the countries and then you will see the difference. Then related to the livestock that they have, they mostly grow pig, poultry, and dairy cattle. So this would be, let's say, most of the feedstock manure that they will have available. Then in terms of biogas in electricity generation, this is around 24%, and the share of biogas in heat generation is around 40%. Then we can see in some cases that there are different approaches by region. This is mostly the case for Belgium and also Spain. So we can see here, for example, that Wallonia has a higher biogas potential in general. Then going over legal and policy framework and socioeconomic aspects. On the legal part, Sofia will be going a little bit more deeper into this part, but I will give you, let's say, like a sneak peek. So in Belgium, one of the main challenges is the long process to get the permits. You will see as we go that this is a common issue for almost all of the countries. And also, depending on the region, the procedure changes from Wallonia, from Flanders, for example. Then on the incentives schemes available, they have investment subsidies, green certificates, and tax reductions, which is a good starting step, of course, compared to other countries who maybe don't have this yet. But there's still the financing challenges, which is also another of the main pain points, let's say, for all countries. It's difficult. The unpredictable returns of investment obviously make the investors not sure on going forward with these technologies. And to that, we add the regulatory and policy hurdles and uncertainty. So it makes it a little bit difficult. Then regarding socioeconomic factors, as I said before, there is uncertainty on how they can gain that money back after the investment. Then regarding social acceptance, smaller plants tend to be more accepted, and larger plants face maybe more opposition due to having more complicated processes, and also regarding odor, traffic, and pollution regulations. Then finally, going to the gender balance, in the family-run plants, we see a better balance of gender equality, but this can vary for larger plants. So in summary, the biggest challenges for Belgium, the permit and financing processes, as I mentioned. Also, financing is easier for smaller plants, but then that puts larger plants in a difficult spot. So there needs to be a balance. So for these, the stakeholder priorities is to focus on that high demand, obviously for small scale plants, because this is making it more appealing maybe for farmers who don't want to do a big upfront investment or do a more small scale installation. And then on the suggestions, technical and financial knowledge is critical for the plant operation, and there's a gap in this knowledge that still needs to be met. Now going over to Denmark. Denmark is, we think, one of the success cases, let's say, because they are pretty forward in this regard of the application of biogas and biomethane solutions. We're looking at the energy mix. We see that they have a bigger chunk of their energy mix for biofuels and waste, and also for geothermal, solar, and wind, which is almost not half, but almost half. Then we can see that since 2000s, they have decreased in 47% their CO2 emissions, which is a good number. Then the share of renewable sources for electricity generation specifically. The energy mix contains everything, and this is just for electricity generation, is about 81%. And this accounts for an increase of 400%, 420%. And then in terms of share of modern renewables, they have 268% of increase from the 2000 to 2023. Then looking at the biogas potential, we can see that it's a little bit higher than Belgium's, 0.8 billion cubic meters. Looking at the outer pie, we can see that the main feedstock available for this is agricultural residues and also animal manure. And most of these potential is related to anaerobic digestion as well. They have mostly pigs and poultry as main livestock. So this would be, let's say, most of the feedstock. Then regarding legal and policy framework, they are one of the countries, at least from ALFA, that is on the forward part of the process, let's say. Regarding environmental and climate policies, they have policies addressing nutrient leaching, reduction of CO2 emissions, and also specific to biogas as renewable energy. Then regarding incentive schemes, they have feed-in tariffs, investment support, subsidies for renewable natural gas, also incentives for co-digestion of manures by banning that limit of nitrogen application, guarantee of origin system, and so on. Regarding regulatory challenges, even though they are very ahead in the game, there are still challenges regarding the permitting, which is, again, a common pain point due to the stringent hygiene standards to ensure environmental and health safety. Then regarding the economic factors, biogas, the biogas expansion market has accelerated greatly after the 2012 subsidies, and also now, since 2024, they have a new subsidy scheme. So we expect that it will continue to grow. And then regarding on-farm scale, it is important to consider in Denmark that most farms are large-scale farms. So probably the solutions that they would need would also be more on the large-scale size part, let's say. Now, as a summary, the main challenges, they are having a need to expand the co-digestion feedstock availability, which is an issue right now. And then promote innovation to make more efficient the processes that they have already implemented. In the stakeholders' priorities, they want to now enhance the incentives for Power-to-X technologies, for example, integrating biogas with CO2 utilization. And then on suggestions, there's still a need to streamline the permit and authorization process. So this is important to take into consideration. Now going with Greece, looking at the energy mix, we can see that they are dependent on oil, a huge percentage, sorry. And then we have biofuels and biowaste around 6.6%. Regarding CO2 emissions, they have managed to lower them in 42% since the 2000s. And then the share of renewable sources in electricity generation is now almost 43%, and this shows an increase of 400% between 2000 and 2022. And then the share of modern renewables, again, with the use of biomass, it has increased in 175%. So we can see that the increase percentages for all countries show that there's an effort being made. So the objective of ALFA is to try to identify these bottlenecks that are making the development slower than it should be. Then regarding biogas potential, we can see that in Greece is around 0.5 BCM. And it's also mostly related to anaerobic digestion, but they also have some contribution from gasification. We can see that also animal manure and agricultural residues are, and also sequential crops, are, let's say, the main feedstock that would be available to produce this biogas. Then in terms of feedstock, they have mainly sheep, goats, pigs, and cattle as main livestock. So this would be more or less the manure that is generated will come from these animals. Then regarding legal and policy framework, legislation includes the streamlining of the authorization processes, replacing the older frameworks. So they have taken a step forward into making it easier to authorize these plans. Then on the incentive schemes, they are also starting this road with schemes that include tax exemptions, subsidies, leasing subsidies, and feed-in tariffs. Countries, for example, like Spain and Belgium are a little bit more behind. Greece would be somewhere in the middle. Then regarding the socioeconomic, the economic factors are that biogas is generating around 1.5 jobs per gigawatt generated. These are 2020 figures. So it is stimulating the local markets. Then regarding social acceptance, a very important effect that we haven't discussed, but it's also common for many of the countries, is the NIMBY effect, which is not in my backyard. This basically means that maybe you as a citizen are okay with biogas and biomethane solutions, but not near your house, for example, because there is a misconception that this will cause noise and annoying odors, for example, which if it's done right, it doesn't have to be the case. So obviously this doesn't help for the acceptance in general of biogas implementation, solution implementation. And then regarding gender balance, this is one of the countries that has the best balance in agriculture, with almost 40% of the workforce being women, but still the young farmers are underrepresented. This is true also for all the other countries. Farmers younger than 40 years old are a very small percentage, and the idea is to also boost this number to have more young farmers participating. Then regarding challenges, again, the bureaucracy of authorization processes, insufficient financial support for small farms, also some limited technological solutions for these small farms, and the social resistance to biogas farms, as we were mentioning. So regarding stakeholder priorities, there's a need for more support on biogas unit licensing and also grid connection. On the suggestions, more simplification of licensing and authorization, and they need more financial incentives as well. Now going to Italy, which is also a country that is forward in the race. We can see that they have around 10% in their energy mix coming from biofuels and waste. We can see that they have decreased their CO2 emissions in 26%. Obviously, now we see, let's say, smaller increases, but there are also big increases. I mean, the previous countries show 400%, 700%, but that is outstanding. This is also a good decrease, especially for the share of renewable sources for electricity generation. We can see that it's almost 90%, which is very close to 100, right? And then the share of modern renewables for energy consumption, we have an increase, big increase of 243%. Regarding the biogas potential, now we see a big jump. Before we were talking about 0 point so on, and now we see that Italy has a biogas potential of 5.8 billion cubic meters. So this is the lead country in terms of biogas potential of the ones that are included for ALFA, of course. Then we can see in the outer pie, again, that the feedstock mostly will come from sequential crops, animal manure, and agricultural residues, and mostly for anaerobic digestion. Regarding the livestock that they have available, they mostly focus on cattle, pigs, and poultry. Now looking at the legislation, they have many measures in place, which is, I believe, why they are forward in this process, regarding waste utilization, cogeneration plans, and simplified steps for authorization processes. The incentive schemes are specific decrees for biogas and biomethane production. So they have, this is important because they have specific regulations for biogas and biomethane, which is not as common, for example, in places like Spain. Like we would need to have more of these specific schemes. Then regarding policies, they address the technical grid connection, biomethane injection, and also renewable energy communities. Then regarding the economic challenges, similar to what we've seen before, they are not exempt, unfortunately, from these challenges, the investment difficulties due to the high variable rates, and also the long authorization process. Even though it's shorter, it's still considered long, and that it could be more efficient. And then on social challenges, there's also an important contribution of the NIMBY effect in this case. Now going for the main challenges, as a summary, investment difficulties, NIMBY effect, and no clear guidelines for plant implementation. This is something that could be improved. The stakeholders' priorities is to create more awareness to combat this NIMBY effect, and also to improve the national regulatory schemes. Even though they are advanced, there's always room for improvement. And then suggestions to increase this awareness level and address the social resistance with cooperative models, clear implementation guidelines, for example, and also develop incentives and regulations for grid connection and cogeneration. Now going more specifically. Now the second to last country, we have Slovakia. We can see that they have, let's say, balanced energy mix, very similar percentages. And then we have the biofuel waste, 11.6%. They had a drop of 24% in their CO2 emissions. Then we have an increase of almost 50% in the share of renewable sources for electricity generation, which accounts for 22%. And then we have also a huge increase of 380% of the share of modern renewables in the final energy consumption. Now seeing biogas potential, we go back to the, let's say, average biogas potentials from the countries that I will show you, which is 0.3 BCM, also mostly based in anaerobic digestion. If we see the outer pie, we can see that this would be mostly agricultural residues and also animal manure. So we see time and time again that there's a lot of feedstock available coming from animal manure that is there and available to be used. Then regarding the main livestock, they have cattle, pigs, and sheep as the main ones. Obviously, this doesn't mean that they don't have other animals, but these are the ones that are grown the most. Then regarding legal and policy framework, they have a legislative framework by Energy Law and Act of Promotion of Renewable Energy Sources, which includes specifically biogas. Then on the policy challenges, there was a stop state policy suspended for new connections above 10 kilowatts capacity. So this hinders the development of new bigger plants. Then on the incentive schemes, they do have issues due to low tariffs and the investment costs that can limit these benefits. And then regarding economic aspects, of course, the biogas supports local economy by providing renewable energy, so it is expected to continue growing. Then as a summary, the main challenges for Slovakia, the high investment cost for upgrading plants specifically, regulatory uncertainties for grid connection of these new biomethane plants, and then also the digestate management is a critical issue, difficult to use, and the export is restricted. Then regarding stakeholders' priorities, they obviously want to continue growing energy, improving energy security through biogas and biomethane implementation. And for this, they need to streamline the permitting process, increase government support, and have more incentives for grid connection. And last but not least, we have Spain. We can see that the energy mix is highly dependent on oil, and we have around 7.4% of biofuels and waste in that energy mix. We have managed to decrease in 22% the emissions that we were generating since 2000. We have increased in 170% the share of renewable sources in power generation, which is accounting now for almost half of that percentage. And then in terms of model renewables, we have increased around 141%. So we can see that all countries in this regard are really showing big numbers, for the increase. Then regarding biogas potential, now again, we see that Spain has a huge biogas potential compared to the other countries, only bested by Italy. We have 4.1 BCMs. We can see in the pie, in the outer part as well, again, animal manure, agricultural residues, and sequential crops are one of the main feedstocks available. And then also, as I was commenting before, for Belgium in Spain, there is huge regionalization of everything because of the autonomous communities that act in the country. So this means that the overall context can change from one region to the other, so this makes it a little bit more complicated. The main type of livestock grown in Spain is pigs, cattle, and poultry. And here we can see, for example, the potential for autonomous community, depending on the type of waste for Spain. Then regarding the legal and policy framework, lack of legal and regulatory framework would be the first item. We need to have, we need to have regulation of the activities related to renewable gas, specifically biogas and biomethane. The items included in the biogas roadmap are still pending to happen. So we're still in that moment where a lot of things have been said, but we're waiting for the implementation. Long processing times, it can take up to a year or more to have an authorization of the plant, which is, I think, one of the highest waiting times for the countries that we are seeing. Then absence of incentives and large taxes being charged to the production of biomethane, for example. Then on socioeconomic aspects, the investors are interested, but they are cautious due to not knowing what's going to happen with the regulatory framework. The social acceptance, there's a lot of lack of knowledge about biogas and the benefits, both for farmers and also citizens. And there is a big gender imbalance in livestock farming in general. This is obviously for female And also there's a low quantity of young farmers represented in this sector. So now to summarize, the last country challenges complex authorization processes, lack of investment incentives, and lack of knowledge and awareness of the benefits of these solutions. What do the stakeholder need? Standardization of this regulation and improving, for example, the valorization of digestate, which is also another challenge in Spain. The suggestions, similar to others, streamline and homogenize all permit process across regions, expanding the incentives for farmers, and focus also on small-scale plants that can be connected to a larger infrastructure or connection grid. So now, just to close as a conclusion, you can have this presentation by the end of the session. But this is just to show that we can see that in terms of biogas potential, we see that Italy and Spain have a huge potential for biogas, but Spain is one of the countries that is behind in the race, let's say, while Italy is one of the leading countries with Denmark. Then we have Slovakia and Greece, who are kind of in the middle. They have implemented some incentives. They have some infrastructure for these connections, but there's still some work to be done. And then we have Belgium, which is, I would say, a little bit more forward than Spain, but also is lacking a lot of support schemes around livestock, agriculture, the same as Spain. So closing, the biggest and most common challenges, streamlining or simplification of the processes for plant implementation, the lack, depending on the country, or need for more specific incentives for biogas and biomethane, the need to update the policies and regulations. This needs to be updated continuously. Then the small presence of women and young people in livestock farming. And then finally, the biogas potential available, not exploited due to several reasons, like lack of infrastructure, regulatory and policy challenges, economic challenges, and others. So this was all from my side. I hope that you found it interesting. If you have any questions, you can leave it in the chat, and I'll leave the floor back to my colleague, Pablo.
Yes, thank you, Carla. Indeed, we had a few questions that we will address at the end of the rest of the presentations. I think now it's time to jump into our next speaker, who is Lucille Server, to talk about the policy context in Europe. So, Lucille, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Pablo. I'm sharing my presentation and in full mode. So can you see my slide?
Not in full screen.
Can you see them now?
No yet.
Okay. Wait, I will do it again then.
Problem.
Is it okay now?
Now it's perfect, yes.
Okay, good. And okay, you see only the screen, yeah?
Yeah, only the screen, yes,
Okay.
correct.
Perfect. Okay. So thanks a lot for the invitation. I'm very happy to be here also. I've been asked to discuss the policy context in Europe, which is a very broad topic. So I will focus mostly on two policy barriers, let's say, and mostly on digestate that was also mentioned by Carla. So it's good to see that it's a barrier in the sense that I will try to explain about it, not that it's good to have a policy barriers related to digestate, of course. But first, let me tell you a few words about the our association, so the European Biogas Association. The main goal of the association is to scale up biogas production and use in Europe. We represent around 8,000 stakeholders in the EU, and we have in our membership more than 350 members, including 51 national biogas associations in Europe, and more than 285 companies, as well as research organizations, universities, etc. I wanted to share some background information about the biogas market. So very quickly, here you can see some data from our latest statistical report that was released in December 2024. So as you can see in 2023, can you see the pointer on the slides when I show something?
Yes.
Perfect. So as you can see, in 2023, we were producing 22.1 billion cubic meters of biogases, including 17.1 of biogas and 4.9 BCM of biomethane. So as you already know, I guess the interest of biomethane is that it's the same molecule than natural gas, so that it can be directly injected into the gas grid. And so 22 BCM, this represents more or less the gas consumption of Belgium, Denmark, and Ireland combined, and it's equivalent to 7% of the EU gas consumption. And as you can see in the graph, in the last 4 years, the biomethane production in Europe has a bit more than doubled. So there is really a steep growth, and it's more located into the biomethane facilities. A few words about the potential, the future potential. So as you know, in May 2022, the European Commission has proposed the Repower EU plan, which included an indicative target of 35 BCM of biomethane by 2030. So basically, this means that we have to scale up biomethane production, because today we produce only 4.1 BCM of biomethane, which is a different number than in the previous slide, because it's only EU 27, not Europe. And so, yeah, according to various studies that you can see there on the slide, we know that the industry could even exceed this 35 BCM target. The EU 27 has actually the capacity to produce 41 BCM of biomethane by 2030. Primarily from anaerobic digestion, using only sustainable feedstocks such as sequential crop, animal manure, of course, agricultural residues, and industrial wastewaters, for instance. By 2040, this could increase to 101 BCM of biomethane, and by 2050 to 151 BCM. And so this means that by 2040, biomethane production could supply 85% of gaseous fuels demand. And this is based on the demand estimate that were included in the EU Commission communication on the 2040 climate target. So of course, for this, if we want to reach really this potential, we need to really unlock policy barriers. We need also more drivers in general for biomethane production. And this is obviously where the political context also comes in place. So how to boost the scale up of biomethane? We have a few general recommendations, and then I will go into more details. So first, we need really a solid and consistent regulatory frameworks. That means clear objectives and guidelines for the industry, clear targets that will also end up being positive signals for investors into biogases. We need also to have flexible open end uses. So all the legislation also related to the various end uses of biogases, such as transport or heating, that they need also to consider biogases as an option. Then we need to encourage sustainable biomethane production. So that means directing feedstocks towards biogas production. So for instance, that can be bio-waste. As you know, there is this concept, this principle of having separate collection of bio-waste that is really not enforced so far in Europe. So it could be really improved and directed towards biogas production. We need to have requirements within the Renewable Energy Directive 3 that are reachable, of course, so that biogas producers have access to sustainable financing in the EU taxonomy, for instance, and also that they are accounted for in the EU emission trading scheme. We need, of course, to facilitate grid injection in Europe, also cross-border trade of biomethane. So, as you know, there are a certification scheme in Europe, and this is still very not harmonized and very complex to use by producers. We could also add there that we need to have a speed up of the permitting process for biogases facilities in Europe in general. This is also a big issue. Another very important driver is to valorize digestate and biogenic carbon as biogases co-products for a circular bioeconomy. They need to digestate, for instance, needs not to be seen anymore as a waste, but really as a valuable organic fertilizer. And I will discuss this into more details. And we need also to have investment on research and innovation to also speed up the developments of the identification of novel feedstocks, for instance, or the improvement of the efficiencies of the plants, for instance. So now I will focus on two things. The first one is the targets at EU level. And the second one that I will really develop a bit more is digestate. But first, I wanted to mention this position statement that we have published not long ago, more or less 1 month ago, following the release of the Repower EU roadmap at EU level. So I already mentioned that there was this target of 35 BCM 2 years ago. Unfortunately, that was not a binding target at EU level, and it did not really provide the legal certainty that biogas producers and investors needed. It did not send also a very strong political signal for member states to really start investing in biogases, to really start prioritizing this type of renewable energy. So we know that with biogases, we have also this concept of circular economy. It's not only about renewable energy, but we are also providing organic fertilizers and biogenic carbon. And despite these clear advantages, we felt like the sector was not receiving really the political recognition it deserved. So this is why we have decided to ask for a binding biogases target of 100 billion cubic meters by 2040. So we know that there will be the publication of communication on the EU climate target for 2040. It is scheduled for publication on the 2nd of July. And this communication at EU level is supposed to set a clear GHG emission reductions path beyond 2030 and to achieve, of course, the 2050 climate neutrality objective. So the Commission has planned already to set this intermediate 2040 target. And obviously, we would like to put biogases in the picture there. We want them to take their place in the energy mix of the future. And this is obviously a window of opportunity. So we are asking for this binding biogases target of 100 BCM by 2040. And also, as additional action to also support the reaching of this target, we have been asking for what we call European biogases charter. That would be basically a roadmap with dedicated actions for biogases, listing a series of recommendations to really be able to deploy biogases. Such as, for instance, I was mentioning the streamlining of permitting procedures for biogases project by implementing digitalization, best practices across member states, etc. And we would also like to include in this charter some national pledges for biogases because it's very important, of course, to deploy at national level also this commitment that is being done at EU level, so that each member state would have its own national action plans to develop biogases at national level. So yes, this is the main action of the moment, let's say, and we are waiting eagerly for the publication of the 2040 climate target communication. And now I will just check the time. Yeah, I will need to accelerate a bit more. So now I will deep dive a bit into digestate. As Carla mentioned, it has been raised, I saw, as a barrier for several member states. And this is really a topic on which we have been working quite a lot at EBA, because we see that a lot of members are telling us that really the management of digestate can be a big barrier to even biogas development. So I will show you this short assessment. So basically, we know that digestate is very valuable. It is more nutrient efficient than raw manure. It contains more readily available nutrients. It has also long-term soil health benefits, also a potential for carbon sequestration. It is a product that is circular, low-tech, and also low CO2 emissions solution. It has certain weaknesses that, of course, needs to be tackled because we know that digestate is still considered waste by end users. Generally, biogas producers do not receive any money from trading digestate. They even sometimes have to pay for the transport and the application of digestate in fields. Digestate can cause also nitrate leaching or ammonia emission, especially when it's not properly managed. It's difficult also to transport, so for longer distances, we need to have some kind of advanced processing of the digestate. Hopefully, we have some opportunities because we know that at EU level, the EU really needs to cut its dependency on Russian fertilizers, especially in the geopolitical context of now that we are facing now. And at EU level, we have also a mineral fertilizer industry, but which is also dependent on Russian natural gas. So the issue is still there. We have also 70% of soils at EU level that are degraded and they need to be restored. And another opportunity for digestate is that circular economy is becoming really a trendy topic. Let's say at EU level, we have the bioeconomy communication that will be published soon by the end of the year. The Circular Economy Act also will be published next year. So it's really high on the political agenda. But we also have threats. So digestate management, as I was saying, in general poses a challenge even for biogas development. In some countries like Spain, it's really a big problem for producers, also because of legislation. Policymakers in general have limited knowledge of digestate. They do not really value its benefits because they just don't know the product. And also, we see from the EU synthetic fertilizers industry in general that there is a reluctance to include recycled nutrients into their product lines. And I will also develop this a bit after. So in general, how to solve this issue? So for us, we really need to support two parallel pathways at Europe. We need to favor local application of raw digestate when it's feasible. Of course, this would need to be with the best agronomic practices, so to avoid any nutrient pollution, of course. And at the same time, when it's not feasible to directly apply it locally, we need also to work on having really a cross-border trade or national also trade of post-processed digestate so that it can be exported a bit further. And this process, we think, should not be carried out by only one stakeholders, but it could be by biogas producers themselves, by startups, by new biorefineries, or also we think that the synthetic fertilizers companies have really a role to play there. And for this, we have three policy recommendations to really support the uptake of digestate. And we have many others, but those are really the top priorities. So first, we would like to have a blending target for recycled nutrients included under the Eco-Design for Sustainable Products Regulation. In the Nitrates Directive, a shift from a manure input limit to a nutrient surplus threshold. I will explain that. And under the EU Fertilizing Products Regulation, we really need to have practical and proportionate requirements for digestate-derived product. So first, regarding the Eco-Design for Sustainable Products Regulation, it's a policy framework basically that is designed to improve the sustainability of products by setting performance and information requirements. And basically what we want is to include fertilizers as products in the framework of this regulation. And we would like to mandate to have a recycled content in these fertilizers. So as I was saying, the issue is that the largest conventional fertilizers producers today are not really transitioning to producing organic-based fertilizers, including incorporating digestate into their product. They are more focused actually on sourcing renewable energy to continue to produce the same product that they've been producing. So we believe that what would be useful is to have a regulatory driver to really, for them a bit and incrementally to include recycled nutrients in their product. So we would like to establish a minimum percentage of fertilizers containing blended recycled nutrients or bio-based fertilizers. And by this, we mean, for instance, in the case of digestate, that can be ammonium salts or stravite derived from digestate. So to have a minimum type of products such as ammonium salts to be sold or used at EU level. And here, again, this is an incentive that really needs to be investigated much further. We need to have an impact assessment because depending on where we put the point of obligation, if it's on farmers or on fertilizers producers, it will not have the same impact. it will depend also on the type of nutrients that is concerned by the obligation. Of course, the target levels also will be important. So really what we are asking is for the Commission, especially DG Grow, that is currently designing a study on bio-based and other non-fossil content requirements for products. We would like to see fertilizers included in this study so that we see how such an incentive could be set up and what would be the impact. But we believe this could be really a good driver for digestate. And then on the nitrates directive, so quite quickly, I hope that you are already aware, but under the nitrates directive, there is this limit of 170 kilograms of nitrogen per hectare per year for manure and processed manure. And well, digestate from manure is considered processed manure, so digestate is also restricted by this limit. And this means that basically farmers can use manure or processed manure until 170 kilograms of nitrogen, and then they have to buy synthetic fertilizers to reach their crop requirements. So this is obviously not a positive outcome. And we know also that at the same time, digestate is not the same product as manure. It's more efficient. Its liquid fraction is even more efficient in terms of nutrient efficiency. So we believe that this should be reviewed, and actually the directive is being evaluated at the moment. There is also another proposal for renewal, but this is a total different topic. Maybe we can discuss during the Q&A also. But for the evaluation of the nitrates directive, what we would like to propose is to replace this limit that is really on the input that you put into the fields with another threshold on nutrient surplus. And basically, the nutrient surplus is the total of nitrogen input. So whether it's coming from synthetic or organic fertilizers, but you also correct the emission. You also remove the nitrogen deposition and the nitrogen fixation. And you, of course, remove from this total N input the N output through crop harvest, and you will get this nutrient surplus indicator. And this is actually an indicator that is being used in several countries. From what we know, it's used in the Netherlands and in France, for instance. And it's really able to tackle the real cause of nitrate leaching, independent from its source, whether it's organic or mineral fertilizer. So it's a really interesting indicator. And again, we would like the Commission to have a look further at maybe changing the approach towards this type of indicator. And in parallel, we know also that the best available practices for the application and storage of digestate could really be further improved because, again, the nitrates directive has not been reviewed in a very, very long time. So there are new practices for digestate management that could be able to really tackle more nutrient pollution in general. And I will skip this slide, you will have it, but basically this is some of the practices to reduce emission from digestate that we want to highlight for the Commission. And I will go straight to the last policy barrier that is in the EU fertilizing products regulation. So you might have heard of this legislation that is supposed to enable the commercialization of EU fertilizing products, including and with a focus also on organic fertilizers normally, because the legislation was supposed to be about improving circular economy also. And basically, when you have a product under this legislation, you need your product to be compliant with the requirement of product function categories. And so basically, what is the function of your product? And then you need also to fill in component material categories. So product can be composed of various component materials categories. And so for digestate, for instance, we know that it is supposed to be able to be considered a solid or a liquid organic fertilizers. But what we realize is that actually the nutrient requirements in the legislation are impossible to meet for digestate. We have also contaminant limits that are not usually tested in labs across Europe and potentially very costly tests. So if you don't go to this category, you can go towards certifying your digestate as an organic soil improver. At least there are no nutrients requirements, but then you have still contaminant limits that are difficult. But if you manage to do it, then you have your component material categories. So there is the one of fresh crop digestate. But here we have, for instance, temperature, time, processing requirements that are really not normal AD practices. So you have this standard of 170 degrees that you need to fulfill. That is very difficult, the pasteurization, basically. And you have also stability criteria that are impossible to meet. And if you go toward the other component material categories, digestate other than fresh crop digestate, again, you have many input materials that are still excluded. For instance, sewage and industrial sludges are excluded. Also, food waste from catering, for instance, is excluded. Certain animal byproduct. And you have also additional analysis on organic pollutants. So this is very technical, and I'm sorry about it, but this is just to show you that basically this is not working today for digestate. And thankfully, the legislation, the FPR, Fertilizing Products Regulation, is being evaluated at the moment. So we are really trying to highlight all of these barriers that make it basically impossible to have a C-labeled digestate at EU level today. And we are really trying to advocate to have more flexible requirements under this legislation. And I think that's all for me. Sorry if I've been a bit late, and I'm happy to answer any question. And also a short ad for our Biogas conference that will be in October. Thank you.
Thank you, Lucille. So since we are a bit late, but don't worry, Sophia, take the time you need.
No, it's fine. It's fine. Let me share my screen, and let's hope that you will be all able to see it. So can you see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. So as I already introduced at the beginning, we as White Research, we linked, among other project activities, the development of a set of policy recommendations and the replication guide. So in this presentation, we will go through some very first findings of our work on the policy aspect of ALFA. So practically what's working so far, what's not working, what's missing, and where we go when it comes to scaling the uptake of biogas systems in livestock farming. So we will start with a quick look at ALFA's relevant activities, then why policy matters at all in this context, and what we are observing across our target countries, and the priorities that we have identified so far. So now, our work on policy recommendations basically started in March and will continue for the next few months up to October, when the project will actually conclude. And our main goal is, on the one hand, to deliver some practical recommendations for both national and EU level policymakers, so that we can possibly contribute to tackling some regulatory uncertainty up to some extent, and to help design better incentives. And at the same time, we are also working on a replication guide that will hopefully assist the deployment of the project's measures beyond the ALFA target countries. So why does policy matter that much when it comes to the uptake of biogas systems in livestock farming? First, because by supporting this transition with the right measures, of course, we can actually cut farm emissions. So we turn manure into clean energy instead of just letting it piling up and release methane. And instead we use it for both fuel and fertilizer. So we close basically the nutrient loop. Then there's, of course, the question of who can actually do it, because without the right support, small farmers and cooperatives, possibly, we can just say, possibly they couldn't afford it. So policy has to help them somehow. Next, infrastructure is another issue. So even if you can produce biogas, connecting to the grid can be either slow or in some cases impossible without clear rules. And finally, inclusion matters. So the transition has to be just and work for everyone, making sure that no one is left behind. So including small farmers as well, women, not just big energy players, that's super important. So an inclusive, good policy framework can also help in addressing some social acceptance challenges as well, which, as we saw in the Carla's presentation, the social acceptance is still a main barrier across all of our target countries. So we need a policy framework that we create transparency that will involve local communities and everyone can be heard. Because otherwise these people cannot really see what the value of such a transition in their own lives. So in this slide, you can see that we have mapped out where its ALFA target country stands across key areas like permitting, market incentives, and others. And I will very shortly explain that in red, you can see that there is either a major bottleneck, something is missing or not functioning at all. Orange, yellow shows partial progress, so something exists, but barriers are still in place. And green means that it's functional, so the biogas deployment is enabled in this case. Now, when looking across countries, you can see that overall the red and the yellow dominate, especially in areas like digestate regulation, permitting, and finance. But it's more than obvious that Denmark stands out. So thanks to its stable and coordinated policy framework, there has been substantial progress compared to the rest of our target countries. In contrast, the rest of the countries are facing multiple structural, let's say, issues all at once. So everything from policy coordination to basic grid access needs just need work because they make scale up very difficult. And as we also saw in Carla's presentation, social acceptance, again, is still a strong barrier for our target countries. But overall, this slide, what we should keep from here is that the progress may be uneven across these countries, but it's also possible when the right frameworks are in place. Okay, so here we just take a closer look at what measures are actually in place. So again, we expected that Denmark again stands out for having a solid, mature, and well-integrated framework. Overall, Italy and Denmark are the two countries that appear to have more functioning support systems and rules compared to the rest. Slovakia and Greece, on the other hand, are somewhere in the middle. They have made some progress, but there are still key measures like digestate regulation or grid access that are still under development. And at the same time, for Spain and Belgium, we can say that they appear to be a bit more fragmented. So in Spain, there is still no biogas specific law, and support is, let's just say, sort of scattered. And on the other hand, focusing on Belgium, we can definitely say that the challenge is regional. So Wallonia appears to be more supportive, but Flanders still remains very restrictive, and especially around whatever has to do with digestate and access to finance. So while there are signs of progress, we can say that most countries still rely on sort of incomplete or inconsistent frameworks. So that needs to change. But at the same time, we should recognize that there are still some positives to build on. So, for instance, there is a recovery and resilience plan funding in Slovakia, along with some updated environmental laws, which is a real improvement in permitting. At the same time, as I again said, Denmark shows what long-term policy support looks like. So we need stable rules, properly working certification systems, and a reliable grid connection. In Greece and Belgium, we're seeing some promising cooperative models like regional upgrading units and cluster-based biomethane pilots. And finally, we can see that there are some national registries that could bring potentially more traceability, including CO2 tracking in Denmark, which would be essential later on in case of market development. Now, looking at what's still missing, unfortunately, we have a quite long list. Permitting is still either too slow or too fragmented, as we saw also in Carla's presentation. At the same time, relevant incentives are either absent or super limited. And then there's digestate, which is still quite underregulated in several countries and let's say treated more as a waste rather than a useful resource. Then limited access to finance is, of course, another barrier. So farmers, and especially small-scale ones, they really struggle to access grants or loans that could fit them. And on top of that, we can also see fragmented national strategies, again, particularly in Spain and Belgium. And finally, there is the issue of inclusion, where, as already said, women and smaller actors are often left out. Now, looking at the bigger picture, a few patterns have really stand out. So first, permitting and digestate regulation are consistent bottlenecks. Secondly, economic incentives vary a lot. So some countries support electricity, but they give little or no help for biogas or digestate use. And additionally, it's clear that biogas policies are still underdeveloped overall. And even countries that are making progress, they haven't yet built the full value chain. And finally, governance really matters. Countries with centralized systems like Denmark, they tend to be much better coordinated, which makes everything from permitting to investment more predictable. So based on everything we've seen, we have grouped the policy actions into two tracks. So quick wins on the one hand, meaning things we can and that we should fix actually in the next couple of years. And longer term transformative steps are changes that will take more time, but they're just as important. So starting with the quick wins, streamlining permit is an obvious one. It's the first barrier that most of the projects we have supported as ALFA Project run into. Then we have digestate rules, and in this case, just making it clear when and how it can be reused would go a long way already. National registries could also be a key, and not just for tracking the actual production, but also for building a real market later on with traceability. And one more thing that we need in the short term is undeniable, could someone say, better coordination at the national level. So especially in countries where regional rules, they just get in the way of actual progress. Now, regarding the long-term measures, first and foremost, we need tailored support for small-scale farmers. And we also have to build up digestate markets so that it's not just a byproduct, but indeed a valuable output. And then aligning with European rules will be very important to give farmers and overall investors some sort of long-term certainty. But we have to say that none of this can possibly scale unless we invest in infrastructure, in grid. And finally, we also need to work on social acceptance through community engagement, possibly education, of course, and better project transparency, so that we can somehow minimize social resistance and build a deep long-term trust. So this is our roadmap. Fix the basics now while laying down the groundwork for real transformation for the future. But again, always based on the initial findings of our work so far. These results will be further revised and validated during a second round of meeting collection that we foresee internally, but also during the policy roundtable that will take place in September, and for which you will find out more in the next slides. So these are the main outputs of ALFA that we are working towards at this point. First, we will develop the replication guide, a practical guide with steps, tools, and recommendations of how to deploy ALFA's concept in other regions and contexts. And we're also preparing some targeted policy briefs in multiple languages so we can help at national level policymakers to act on what we have learned so far. And additionally, as just mentioned, policy roundtable will take place in September, along with our final event, where we will refine the final policy recommendations in collaboration with European level stakeholders. And building on all the knowledge we have collected, by the end of the project, we will draft a set of final policy recommendations to support both European and national level policymakers. And once these materials are finalized and approved by the Commission, they will all be available on the ALFA website and free access. So that said, we will be holding the ALFA final event and policy roundtable on September 25th in Brussels. It's an on-site event. There will be plenty of stakeholders participating, including our hub representatives, policymakers, other EU-funded projects, and overall European stakeholders. So we'll present the project's main findings, findings from other relevant projects. And of course, as said, we will finalize our policy recommendations. So stay tuned. All the details for the event will be available soon, both on the project's website and social media. So with that said, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you so much, Sophia. I will share the screen one more time. And I think we can do. Can you see the slides?
Yes.
Okay, so in the first place, I would like to invite all our attendees to scan this QR code. And just this is just a satisfaction survey to evaluate the quality of the content that all of our speakers has showcased today. So it will be very helpful if you can fill it. It just take like 1-2 minutes. And I think that by the time that you fill your satisfaction levels in this survey, we can answer some of the questions that the audience has entered in the chat. So the first one is addressed to Carla, and it says, what was the selection criteria? Why did you choose these mentioned countries?
Yes, I can answer this together with the second one that says Denmark and Italy seem to be the success cases to follow. How has this been materialized in the project? They are related. I believe that the main point when writing the proposal, because this is an European funded project, so we have a contract, there's a proposal that was written a while ago. And I think that the point back then was that it was already identified that these countries were at different stages of development in terms of biogas adoption. So the idea of the project is to have a lot of interactive activities, mutual learning workshops, so that we can replicate best practices from one country to the others. So for that, we need some countries who are a little bit more advanced, others who are in the middle, and others who are a little bit less advanced, so that we can, retrofit with each other. So this is the way also that it has been materialized in the project. We have relied a lot on interventions from more Danish and Italian partners in all of the project activities because they have a lot of knowledge. And in that way, we can foster the discussion and have them as, let's say, as reference for the implementation of measures.
Great, thank you, Carla. You also have another one, the third one, that it says in most countries presented lack of regulatory and policy framework are still a challenge, even if many studies suggested and proved the benefits and necessity of including biogas, increased viability of advanced technology, and the availabilities of surplus feedstock. What is your assessment as a reason for these long-standing challenging conditions?
Yes, I can answer this question more for Spain than for other countries because I think this is very specific. As we saw in the presentations, each country has its own complicated context. In the case of Spain, it seems that the biogas market is still emerging, so it's quite young in that sense. So there's not huge demand still for these solutions. This normally happens when the government implements restrictions and regulations, and then the market answers. But in this sense, the Spanish government has focused more, for example, in the wind and solar power instead of biogas and biomethane. So I think the market reflects those regulations exactly as they are. Mostly they have taken an approach of speaking about biogas and biomethane from the renewable energy framework, let's say, and not so much from the agricultural framework. So also farmers really don't feel like it's their business, let's say, because it has been addressed like from another perspective. So I think these are one of the things that are working to stop the development or to act as a bottleneck in Spain, for example.
I don't know if Sophia or Lucille want to add something else.
Yeah, I would like to add first on the second question to say that for Denmark specifically, during the policy roundtable, we plan to run a backcasting exercise, a policy backcasting exercise specifically using Denmark as the 2030 scenario, let's say. So a sort of future ideal state to work backwards from, so we can set some phases and steps for the rest of the countries to work towards to. But at the same time, of course, we will recognize that even if this is a success case compared to the rest of the countries, it still has gaps. So we won't treat it as a perfect model, let's say, but mostly as evidence of what's possible when policy aligns well. And then about the third question, I could say that maybe ourselves, we could have asked why is this still happening during the implementation of this project. So it could, I mean, there are evidence, as said, that about the benefits of biogas, but this is not, what's happening is not due to the lack of data or the technical maturity, let's say, but it could be due to other structural or political factors. So we have to acknowledge the fact that biogas is not fully owned by someone. So it's in between agriculture, energy, and environment. So no one basically fully owns it. And at the same time, we tend to see that large-scale renewable projects are prioritized compared to decentralized solutions like biogas. So all of that add to the current situation remaining stable.
Okay, great, thank you. I don't know, Lucille, if you want to add something else.
Not, maybe on the last question also, this is also why I presented this concept of having this EU target, because I think in general, there is not necessarily a shared political will across member states to make biogas is part of the energy mix. And in general, there are some countries where they favor also solar or wind power indeed. And this is, for me, the first barrier. And this is also related to, in general, maybe the lack of knowledge also on the additional co-benefits, also on the digestate part, on the biogenic carbon that is becoming also more and more important. And yeah, this is really what we are trying to highlight also at EU level.
Okay, thank you so much. I think that was all of the questions that the audience asked. So again, but if you have any other more questions that you may have in the future, you can reach us at this email address, info@alfares.eu, and also all our different social media channels. And as Sophia said, stay tuned for the final event project, where we will showcase all the different outputs that have been generated during the project lifetime. For me, it's been a pleasure to moderate this webinar. I would like to thank all the different speakers that have presented today, as well as all the attendees that has attended today. So it's been a pleasure, and stay tuned to see the final results of the ALFA project. So thank you so much, Sophia, Carla, Lucille. See you in another webinar, in another event. So stay tuned. I invite you to follow the project.
Thank you, Pablo. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so
Pablo, and
much.
everyone.
Bye-bye.